And we are now live. How's everybody doing today?
What's up?
Good, John. How you doing?
What's going on?
I want to welcome everyone who's watching right now, and also to those who are going to be watching the replay of this. We're doing a quick live stream today, as I kind of advertised in the community section of my YouTube channel. We've got 3 of the 5 idiots from 5 Idiots Talking Toys. And originally it was just going to be me and Chris and his brother Chaz. Well, guess what? Brandon decided to also join us. So thank goodness for that. We've got somebody to keep everyone in check here. And I just want to welcome you guys to the channel. And let's do a quick hello to those who are already in the live stream. We've got Cisco. Hi, Cisco. Blacked Out Ewoks is in the house.
BOE.
Lee Mitchell. Good evening. Good evening. Gerard Coyle's here. Man, we've got some folks actually watching, and we got 10 folks already in the live stream. So that is great news. So for those of you who are not following 5 Idiots Talking Toys on YouTube, now's a good time to go ahead and get on there and like and subscribe to their channel. But we got 3 of the 5 here, and let's do a quick introduction first. Chaz, how are you?
Good.
Well, you haven't been on the channel yet, so I'm glad that we could finally corral you to get on here. And Brandon, how are things over there?
Great. Nice and sunny. 70 degrees. Can't complain.
I love that store display you got behind you there with Vader and the Emperor's Royal Guards. That is pure fire. I would get that in acrylic. I'm like Indiana Jones in some movie saying that belongs in a museum. I would actually grade that. It would cost like $600 to grade it.
And so, it would take about 6 years.
It would. It would. Chris, how are you, man?
Good. Same old here. Living the life.
Well, I want to say thank you again to all those who are already in the chat. We got 17 folks watching. And, as I mentioned, we don't really have an agenda for today. So I want you guys to bring your questions and, let me know whatever y'all want to talk about. Obviously, vintage Star Wars toys are these guys' specialties. They run Rogue 5 Toys on Facebook. Great sales page. I spend way too much money on y'all's Facebook page. And that's really all I buy from. Keith Guppy's in the house. He's a Patreon supporter and got one of the largest collections I've ever seen in my life. Good Lord.
Yeah. Good to see
Keith. So first of all, let's do this. Chaz, we haven't had you on before. So give us a quick background on your kind of when you decided to get really serious about collecting, getting stuff graded, all that good stuff. You've had some recent stuff in from Collector Archive Services, and it was like 85s, 90s, 90 pluses, and it puts to shame anything that I send in. But give me a quick rundown of your collecting background.
Yeah, so I started collecting Star Wars a long time ago, like numerous separate times. I end up selling my whole collection. I think I'm probably on my 4th time. I sold the first 3 collections. This time I've been doing it, for a longer period of time. And now I send all my stuff in for grading. I use CAS and I use AFA like more recently. So, like most of the stuff I send in is probably like 85 or above. I mean, I like to think I know what they're looking for. So I don't send something in unless I really think it's going to have a high grade to it.
Well, you seem to have it down based on that last unboxing on y'all's channel. It was pretty incredible seeing all those high grades. Brandon, let's get a little background from you. Tell us about how you really got into collecting and kind of what your kind of focus is, anything like that.
Well, I think collecting is sort of a disease in my family because it started off with my dad collecting toys and comic books and cards and stuff. And back in the 90s, and I used to go with him to all the stores and collect with him as well. So I had my own little collection of comic books and cards. But ever since I got married, I think I got really heavy into the collecting of toys. I think because I got bored. Yeah. So and my wife didn't even know I collected anything until we got married. So I got really heavy into collecting, obviously with the pandemic and all that. And I've always been into Star Wars and collecting those toys since I was in the 90s. So now it's kind of like my extra hobby.
Does your wife tolerate it, or does she encourage it, or is she just kind of silently accepting? What's her?
No,
her-
there's nothing silent. It's verbally and abusively against it. But I haven't started down the grading path either. I do have a couple items at CAS that are custom that are getting graded right now. But I'm starting to get a little interested in grading, and we'll see what happens in the future.
It's the dark path. Don't take it. Don't take it. I think Chaz and Chris will attest that it becomes a money drain. It sucks your life force out. We got a question from the audience. Let's go ahead and dig into a couple of these, and we'll kind of do round robin. So I'm going to start with Chaz on this. What's the last vintage item you bought? And that's from Jules Bird. I want to give a shout out to Jules. He's got a fantastic channel or 4, and is way bigger than I'll ever be in terms of YouTubing. So thank you, Jules, for joining us.
Hey, Jules. Thanks for the question. The last thing I bought was actually yesterday. Of course it was. Yeah. My brother sent out a message. There was a chocolate brown hair Luke farm boy on eBay. A really
I saw
good
that.
price.
Oh,
yeah.
It was hot.
It was a really good price. I don't have it. He sent a message, and I had it within probably 3 seconds.
Yeah, I think that was the right call, man. That was a really good price, and it's a very difficult variant to find. So congrats on that. That was a beauty.
Archival
Chris, how about you, man?
So my latest pickup was probably the Generation 1 Polish Boba Fett.
Of course it is, yeah.
Saw this in one of the groups, and I'm starting to go down the dark path now with this. So,
what is it? It's graded 85, right?
Got graded a CAS 85, yeah. And
I talked about bootlegs on my channel here fairly recently, and to get a first generation Boba Fett in that high of a grade is extremely difficult. I mean, I've seen maybe a handful, less than 5, that are that mint. It's easy to get the third generation because they came out in like 94, 95 in high grade. But to get a first generation Polish Boba Fett, especially at the price you got it for, that was a really good pickup, I think.
That's why when I saw it, I just made sure to touch base with you and ask the questions that needed to be asked, and then I jumped all over it.
So for anyone who they don't watch our show, on Wednesday nights, we have like a wins and whiffs where we show what we bought or what we got, screwed on or something like that. So normally Chris is in the top tier. He's showing multiple items in the 5,000 or higher mark. And the rest of the guys usually have something less than $100. So it's usually a pretty good watch.
Great info. Brandon, you're last here. Or you're next to last? I'll go last. What have you picked up anything recently?
Yeah, it's right here. It's my UPS "Sorry we missed you" slip. It's for another sandcrawler that I just picked up yesterday. I think it shipped out.
Sandcrawler, that's a big item.
Yeah.
Another one?
I know you just got one.
Yeah, no, I had to buy another one.
Oh my god!
I think I'm going to start down buying sandcrawlers now.
For what? What are you going to do with them?
I'm going to race them. I'm going to put 8 of them. I'm going to race them in the backyard and see what happens.
Well,
at least Sam's is getting stuff back from CAS. I've got stuff that's running at 8.5 months now, so I've given up.
I just got a shipping invoice this morning too. It was for $124.
I'm pretty sure that they hate me. I've just completely given up. I mean,
I stopped looking. I stopped checking. I just don't even care anymore.
Well, I got to show my big boy. I haven't shown this on the channel yet, but I picked this up from Chris, and this is a beauty I picked up a few weeks ago. That's the last item I bought, and that is a Canadian, beautiful, unpunched Yoda. And here's the La Guerre des Étoiles. This is probably, honestly, this is going to be my last big purchase for the year. I just don't want to spend any money right now. But it is graded straight 85s by CAS, and it has the blister support. So, Chris, really appreciative of this one, man. It's just an absolute gem. And
I actually found that one out in the wild, and then I sent it in for grading, and it just came back perfect.
Well, it's a really awesome item. I'm very happy to have it, but that is probably going to do it for me for this year. Scruffy looking Nerf herder. What is your most sought after figure, mock or loose? And Chaz, we'll go back to you.
I collect red bars, R5D4 red bars, but I'm starting to move into the TIE fighter pilot. I don't know. I just have like a thing for him, so I think I'm going to start that path now. Not mocks though. I'm not a mock guy.
Brandon, how about you? Let's skip to Brandon.
I'm a variant Yoda collector usually, but I did pick up a nice TIE fighter pilot mock because you can't get can't get any variants of TIE fighter pilot just to figure. You can get the bootlegs and stuff like that, but I like the artwork on that card. But yeah, Yoda's my main figure that I collect. I also have a Canadian mock and a normal 32 back as well.
Chris, what are you looking to pick up? I know everything is usually your answer, but do you have anything on your big wish list right now?
That actually was my answer. I was going to say everything that I don't have, but I am waiting for a decent price on a double telescoping Vader or Ben Kenobi.
Whew. Whenever you get those in, I want to have you on the channel again because it's just one of those things that I will never own personally, and it's just one of those insanely rare items that
I'm probably never going to own it either. But unless there's a good deal on one, then I will. I'm not going to have a high grade. I'll be a low grade, but it's it's fine.
Yeah. Well, they are pricey.
Yeah.
And all right, Gerard Coyle, he's a longtime subscriber. If you all could have one item from one of your fellow idiots' collection, what would it be? I think that's a good question.
I know one. Chris already sold it.
What was it?
It's sitting right behind you, John.
Oh,
not that one. No, the Trilogo Bosk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a gorgeous item. That was beautiful. I think we all know who bought that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no one knows what Brandon actually has in his collection. He doesn't show us his collection. You don't see pictures, but if you ask him, "Do you have this?" he'll pull out 7 of each.
Just that store display alone is insane. That's just one of those awesome items that you just never see.
Charles actually had a graded Wampa that I wanted because it was nice and white looking when most of them are always yellow. And the good brother that he is, he wouldn't sell it to me.
Well,
I don't blame you, Charles.
And I'm going to go over his house and I'm going to see my Wampa at his house. I'd rather sit at someone else's house.
It just teases you, Charles. What do you have? What from either Brandon or Chris or any of the guys? John, what would you like to have?
The only one who I really know that has stuff is my brother because I went to his house. You never see Brandon. I know he has everything. Look behind him at how many things are behind him. It's unreal. Probably from Chris, I would say the Glass Fleet Luke Skywalker. He just got.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
That thing is awesome.
Yeah,
like the other day, someone asked Brandon if he had a purple stitch Jawa. John, he reached into a drawer and pulled out 7 of them.
Seriously, he had 7.
Who would have known?
They're not.
Yeah,
rare.
those are sneaky expensive now and high grade. I got a good question from Keith Guppy, and I'll let whoever has been dealing with AFA. I haven't gotten anything from AFA, but Keith Guppy, he says, UKG is running about 6 months now. And what's the latest from CAS and the AFA? My experience is, personally, I can tell you that CAS, it's more like 7 or 8 months now minimum. I've got stuff that is just standard mint on card stuff that is at 8.5 months and that hasn't been touched yet. So, but you guys, Charles, why don't you start with CAS and AFA?
It's a good question, Keith, and one that really pisses me off. CAS, I just got back. I sent in an order 1/13 of this year. So that means I sent it in November of last year. So it takes about 2 months for them to check it in. I just got that back last week. So 10 months, something like that. AFA, I have 4 orders My first one I sent was in May. They checked it in June, and they said it should be done the end of August. And we're halfway through September. I don't have it yet, so I'm not really sure for them.
I know CIS keeps saying that everything is 6 to 8 months, but I have not seen one thing come back less than 8 months. So it seems like 8 months is the minimum, and it's about 8 to 10 months probably. That seems like the new norm right now.
I mean, let's put this in perspective on how well CGC is turning around comics right now. I sent a batch of comics. They arrived at their facility. I sent it September 6th. They arrived at their facility on September 8th. They were checked in 6 hours. They were checked in and logged in and added to the line in 6 hours later. 2 days later, they were done grading them, and they're going to arrive on my doorstep sometime in the next hour or two. That's 10-day turnaround. I didn't pay for anything more. Now, you got to remember that earlier this year, their turnaround times were running 5 to 5.5 months. They've cut from 5.5 months to 10 days. That's for standard service. And I mean, it's mind-blowing, and I know it's easier with comics because they're all the same size. It's kind of like, it's an assembly line to a certain extent. But will we ever see turnaround times drop? I don't know. It's mind-blowing to me how long it takes, and it might just be part of the game with toys. But now that CGC is kind of moving into toys slowly, my hope, in a dream world 5 years from now, CGC's grading packaged toys, and they're turning them around in 30 days or less, like they are with comics.
That would be amazing.
It would. I would send them stuff in a heartbeat if they ever got to that.
Everything used to be like 3 to 4 months, like before the pandemic, and that wasn't, people didn't mind waiting that, but now it's taken too long that even I don't send stuff in as much anymore.
Yeah, I've basically stopped sending stuff. I just sent in a small batch to CAS, and it was just two beautiful subscriber gifts, with some General Grievous. Before that, it's been 2 or 3 months at least since I've sent in anything. It's just it's too frustrating to deal with. All right, Blacked Out Earbox has got a question for us. What's the strangest thing you have graded? For me, it's a UKG Ralph McQuarrie portfolio. I remember that. And a Gentle Giant 12-inch carded Han Solo. That's got to be an absolutely massive case. Chris, you probably have some pretty crazy stuff. What do you got that's the weirdest thing that's graded?
I have two things that are weird. One of them is just plain dumb, and the other one is just weird. So one, I have a Lily Letty Overstock Cloud Car Pilot head. So
that one's awesome, though. I love that.
It is, but it's kind of dumb when you think about it. So
I'd buy that in a heartbeat from you.
It's just the Overstock head. It's unpainted, and it's like floating in the middle of the case because it has this nice little bracket that CAS does an amazing job on. I can never knock them on that. They actually do a really good job. But then for whatever reason, I ended up grading a Salacious Crumb, and
I was just going to say that's your worst one.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I graded a Salacious Crumb and like the pipe bowl with it because they came in two different baggies, and for whatever reason I put them together and graded it, and I actually waited 8 months for that thing. I don't know why. I think it actually lost value after grading.
Yeah, I don't even want to count how many stupid things I've got in my collection. It's mind numbing how much stuff. I mean, I've got like die-cast model kits from Japan that no one cares about, and I've got them all like custom displayed, and I'm like, why did I do that? But it is what it is. Charles, do you have anything weird in your collection that's graded?
I have something that's really cool. It is weird, and I've never seen one. I don't have it back yet, but I'm grading a side gunner next to like an Imperial gunner. So that should be back maybe 2030.
That's going to look awesome. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, it's going to look cool.
I've actually never seen a side gunner graded ever, like loose graded. So to see one loose graded with the Imperial gunner next to it is going to look awesome.
Yeah.
We got a question from Wooden Jedi. What do you guys' thoughts on Lego being this generation's comparable to action figures? Brandon, thoughts? Go.
I think it's already mainstream for the most part. I mean, Lego is the prices on some of these sets that Like I just saw a Death Star set go for like $1,500, and I don't know what year it came out because I don't really follow Lego, but the prices on some of these items that are sealed are reaching vintage or going above vintage prices. So I think it's already hitting the market what we're seeing right now.
So this is really good timing because my son, he's 4, he'll be 5 at the end of the year. He is obsessed with Star Wars Legos. So I probably spend $200 a month. He wanted a Jango Fett, and that figure is $179. So I found like a repro one online for like $7, and he walks around with this Jango Fett. He has no clue it's not a real one.
That's a smart move right there.
Very
smart man.
Very smart. So they have like repros of the Star Wars figures. So it must be popular.
God.
This is a good question that I think is especially good for the three of you, since you guys really do sell a lot on Rogue 5 toys. But, how do you guys source your sale, the stuff, their inventory? How do you guys find your new inventory that you guys end up selling on Rogue 5? And, Clobber mentioned swap meets, flea markets. I mean, do you guys hit up garage sales? I mean, I just am always fascinated by resellers like you guys that are able to find, especially mint. I mean, Charles, especially, I don't know where you get all these beautiful mint figures that have these high grades, but I would love to hear from you guys on how you source your inventory.
You can go first, Chris.
I think for me, or really for the three of us, it's just word of mouth. Us being on the page and us having our own YouTube podcast, people reach out to us because now they see that, we sell stuff and that we pay very fairly. So for the most part, people are just reaching out to us, offering us stuff, showing us pictures. It's really all word of mouth. I've had complete strangers reach out to me saying, a friend of a friend told me that you buy stuff. Can you help me? And I'm just like, yeah, sure. And that's how I get most of mine.
Brandon, how about you?
I hit up some vintage shops. Sometimes I go to the swap meets, flea markets, but I really don't find anything that's great there. But collection here or there, I'll buy. But I've got so much stuff that I've been hoarding for throughout the years. So that's where I get my stuff.
PC downsizing. There's nothing wrong with that.
We actually used to think that Brandon was a serious collector, and then now we realize he's a serious hoarder, not really a collector. Because he has, John, like when I mean to tell you he has everything, he has everything.
Well, it doesn't help that I still have my collection from the 90s that's still boxed up.
Yeah.
Some of it here and some of it is at my mom's house.
He's not a seller. Like, he's like a once in a while, he realizes he has 40 Yodas, so he sells like one of them.
No, I have way more than 40 Yodas.
That's Brandon.
I have 40. I have 40 Imperial Gunners, and I'm like, I probably need to sell a couple.
Well, it's nice like that to have that though, Brandon, because if you need some money in a pinch to pay for some other collectible, it's nice to just be able to dump them on the page, and they usually sell pretty darn quick. So
yeah.
Charles, how about you? How do you typically like to source your new inventory or items that you send for grading?
So mine is mostly word of mouth also, and I'm probably the same as Chris. We're like really like anal. So I think at one point at CAS, I think I had 12 Rebo bands because I just want to get all like 95s, even though I have no 95s. I always make an attempt at it, so I'll send them like 7 squid head and 13 Rebo bands, whatever. I send them like max amount, and I keep the highest one, and I just keep on rotating. If I get a 90 in, I'll sell my lower grade one.
Well, I got a question on that now. So, CAS operates with the decimal system. So let's say you got in your personal collection a CAS 90, and then another one comes in that's a CAS 90.1. Do you rotate them?
No. Well, you know what? I will rotate them for the reason that the 90.1 is a newer grade. So I will rotate those, but
you guys are way more into that than I am, but that's pretty good. Dennis has got a question. He says, do you collect the vintage collection and or Black Series? I think I know the answer for Chris. I don't know about you, Charles, or Brandon. So Brandon, you go first.
I don't collect those lines. I might collect a figure here and there from those lines if I like that character.
For me,
so I do whatever my son wants after vintage. So if he wants something, I'll buy it for him. I have no problem buying for it. For myself, I have some, but not many at all.
Behind your head.
That's what I'm saying. I have some.
Omar Bunk.
No, he's got 2 Andor figures there.
I have a lot more than 2. I just have 2 showing.
Chris, how about you, man?
I was going to say that you're actually really good at spending my money, so you kind of got me into collecting the TVC line, and then after doing it for a few months, seeing how many new releases are constantly coming out, you have to be on your phone all different times to pre-order this and pre-order that, and then they come in damaged. I completely gave up, and I'm selling off all of that modern stuff. I just can't do it. It's way too much for me.
Yeah, I basically had to cut it down now. And looks like somebody, what is this? Save the Rancor just gave a super chat, so I want to make sure to get that out there. Thank you very much for doing that. Save the Rancor. It's way too kind to you. But anyway, I've tried to collect every TVC that came out, and I finally had to give up because I just ran out of space. And so now I just pick up like the really cool ones, like the Mandalorian Super Commando with like the horns on the helmet. I mean, how do I not buy that? I had to buy that. And so but I've basically stopped pre-ordering anything. I've canceled a bunch of pre-orders, but I've got so many of them that are either at grading or I'm just going to hold on to them here because it's just too much, man. I got a question from Vic. Vic G says, I have a question. How long does it take for a figure to tarnish in its casing? And I only have one example in my collection where it's very clear that the figure degraded post-grading. And that was, of course, a Spanish PvP figure because the plastics that they used on those are so, they're not as high quality and they don't, they just don't last, whether you got them encased or not. But do you guys have any other experiences for having a graded anything that has degraded inside the acrylic case? That's really the only example from my collection I can think of off the top of my head.
I've been collecting loose graded since 2012, and I can say that I've never had one degrade on me. I've seen it happen if it's not like an archival case or a museum casing from CAS. But I haven't owned any that has actually happened to me.
And Brandon, you said you don't really have any graded items. Is that correct?
Not yet.
Yeah. You're smart. You're probably the smartest of the 4 of us because you haven't gone down that path. Charles, have you had any bad experiences there?
No. I think it depends on the temperature. Is it in sunlight, humidity level? So all that stuff affects it. I have this behind me, which pretty much has nothing. Other than that, all my stuff is stacked in a closet. You can't even see it.
Yeah, I think I would. Whoa, somebody just did something crazy. Hitchville. Holy moly. Hitchville says, hey, sexy bros. Well, except for Johnny. Shouldn't Chris be out searching for Walmarts? Shouldn't Brandon be at a con? Shouldn't Charles be boxing up more loose graded for me? So Hitchville sent in $49.99 super chat, and I'm blown away by that. That is just way too kind. The toy community, number one, they watch my stupid videos, our stupid videos, both of our channels. But I just received 2 beautiful General Grievous vintage collection from Mike Chan and Chet Osterfield. I mean, I've received from James Marlin. He sent me like a Canadian Boba Fett with an error sticker. I've had a gentleman down in Mexico send me a very, very rare squid head bootleg. And it's mind blowing to me how generous the community is. And I just want to get that out there. I know that I'm really kind of stating the obvious, but it is mind blowing to me. So
I would say that some of my closest friends that I talk to on a daily basis now are from the Star Wars community. That's who I talk to daily.
Yeah, I don't really have any real friends, to be honest, like in town. I mean, my closest friends are all virtual with you guys and some of the folks over in the UK that I talk with regularly. But, there's nobody that likes me here in town, because I think that if you lived in town, you probably wouldn't like me. It's because we're at arm's length, the arm's length kind of thing. It helps a lot, I think.
I would be your friend, John. If I lived near you, I would be your friend.
Well, I appreciate I appreciate that. All right, Lee's got a question. So, do you think that there's a gap in the market for a new company to grade figures? And I think there is. I think there is.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
I think CGC is gonna get into graded action figures. I really do. That I started looking up Blackstone Group, which owns CGC. They have 880 billion with a B assets under management. They could literally buy Hasbro, buy the entire company. Hasbro's market capitalization, the value of the company is 10 billion. They could write a check for it tomorrow. It's a rounding error. Buying Hasbro for Blackstone is a rounding error on their balance sheet. So I with CGC, they already own Lego. I personally think that, and I'm going to talk about this in a video next week, but I personally think that there is a gap for providing for standard packaged goods that can become standardized. You know what I mean? Assembly line type process. I think loose graded. No, I agree with Charles on that. That I don't foresee anyone trying to get into kind of loose graded stuff or customization. AFA and CAS, at least here in the US, they have that covered pretty well. Obviously, UKG has that covered over on the other side of the pond. But I think for packaged products, there's absolutely a gap for it. And I think part of the reason that graded collectibles are so expensive right now is because of a lack of supply. It just takes so long to get stuff back. And the demand is still, even in this kind of wavy or wavering economy, doesn't it seem like to you that there's a gap there to kind of fill in the supply issues that we're having? And I'll shut up now. Chris, to you.
I was actually going to say the opposite. I actually think a company that has a lot of money could come in right now, only if they can turn those turnaround times to like a very small minimum of like 1 to 3 months. So if someone comes in that's backed by big names and has a lot of money and people that you would probably trust, if they say, hey, you can get your items back in 1 to 3 months, I would send some stuff in, absolutely, and see how it comes back. Who wants to wait 10 months and longer anymore?
Not me.
Not me.
Charles, expand on your thought, Charles. Do you think your answer is no? You think that there's no room at all for a third real competitor?
No, absolutely not.
I think that, Brandon, what are your thoughts here? I think personally that's fine. That's fine, Charles. You can have your opinion.
Yeah, but his answer was no, and then he didn't say anything else. That was it.
Well, because he was already moving on to Brandon, who doesn't actually buy graded items. But
well, if you got additional thoughts, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I think the biggest challenge is pedigree and reputation, building that up. It's really difficult to do that.
Yeah. So CAS has their main guy, and so does AFA. I think the huge problems are CAS has to they have to get rid of the photo taking. No one cares about the photo card, the SOA. No one cares about snapping a photo. Just throw the grade on the website and send that thing out. They can streamline it a lot more. And for the AFA side, they have the money. I don't know why they're not just at that like 1 month mark for sending stuff back. And for you to get a third like company in, it's so hard for you to get a name, and now so many people need to like switch their whole set around to this new place. I don't know. I just don't see it happening.
Well, so for instance, look at me and John. Me and John have UKG graded items. We have CAS and we have AFA. So we already have all three now as it is. If John wanted to buy an item and it was a fourth grading, that's not going to hold him back from buying it.
Well, here's the way I look at it. If I've got something that's extremely rare, like a toxic limbs boss, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I'd want to send it probably to AFA or CAS, somebody that's got some reputation behind it.
Correct.
But something like vintage collection, modern vintage or Black Series figures, where it's really about just knowing that it's really clean. I would be okay if, like, let's say CGC all of a sudden says, we're going to start grading modern Star Wars stuff, vintage collection only. That's it. I would try CGC out just to get it done faster. And I think that's got enough cachet in other collectibles lines that I think that they could transition over into that stuff pretty easily. Now, again, I don't think that they would be interested in grading vintage stuff. I think it would just all be kind of modern stuff, but what do I know? Brandon, do you have any thoughts on that? I know you don't collect graded, but I try to, do a round robin here.
Well, I think there's only a few people that actually know what they're doing when they're grading vintage figures. Kind of like if you own an old car, right, that has a carburetor. How many people do you know that can work on a carburetor nowadays? You got to take it to a specialized shop. I view vintage the same way. There's only a couple people that know, repro versus all the other stuff versus bootlegs and stuff like that. So there's a couple experts, and those are the ones that are employed by CAS and AFA. So unless you can get more experts out there that know what they're doing, that can grade vintage stuff like that, and you can trust them, and they're well known in the community, and I don't think you can open up another shop. Of course, some of the newer stuff that is not highly, copied or faked, I'm sure you can start grading those, like you mentioned, Black Series and TVC type stuff. I think that stuff's easier.
Yeah, I guess I should have qualified my statement there about that and said that I really do think that there's another market for it. I don't know if it's really another market for vintage, though. It would have to be modern stuff that's pretty easy to identify. And that's a great point, Brandon, about there's not much counterfeiting going on. There is some for Black Series. There's a lot of counterfeiting going on for that, especially the early Orange Line series. But for vintage collection, for example, nobody's really faking those. I mean, I think it would be a pretty streamlined, and all the items are pretty new anyway. Really, right? You're talking about if someone's going to send a vintage collection figure in for grading, it's going to get somewhere between an 80 and a 90, most likely, right? Unless you just have a bad eye, like I do sometimes.
So now, is this a bad time to tell you that Charles and I are starting our own grading company called the Wowminster Express, and you will get your
idiots grading toys.
You'll get your items back within 3 months. No one's going to buy it.
There are mom and pop type shops that kind of do it. I mean, I'm not trying to say that there's not other folks out there, but I don't think they've really caught on because, there's no cash behind it. And yeah. I think it would have to be a company that, like CGC, that has cachet, that has big bucks. I mean, they could open up a whole new manufacturer, acrylic assembly and hire a bunch of experts, throw money at the problem, and very quick. I mean, they're already moving into Funko. That's a modern standardized item. Mm-hmm. How hard is it to come up with a case for vintage collection? Almost all the cards are exactly the same. I just think it would be pretty easy to do. But all right, I got a question for you. This is interesting. What are your favorite search terms on eBay for Star Wars stuff? I'm trying to stay off eBay personally, but I'm going to start with Chris on this because every single day he's sending me links with new listings. I'm like, dude, I'm not buying anymore. Stop sending me stuff. But what are your favorite search terms, Chris?
I have like every type of wording that you can possibly imagine. I just type it in. So I have like vintage Star Wars. I have vintage Star Wars graded. I have vintage Star Wars AFA, vintage Star Wars CAS. I have vintage Star Wars Lily Letty. It just I have
on and on.
Yeah, I have so many that I'm always looking, I'm always checking, but not even to buy, just to check prices, just to see how things are doing, what things are selling for. We all sell, so we need to keep up to date on really what's going on.
Brandon, what are your favorite search terms? Yoda and more Yoda?
Well, we have an episode where we post the most hilarious eBay listings or something that we question. So I'm looking out for those. Anything with like dirty feet or, any kind of nude photos holding toys or anything like that we can.
There's always a lot of women holding. I haven't seen it in a while, but there's women with bikinis holding like a Yoda,
like a Luke Skywalker. And it's like,
Yeah. Dirty, muddy feet or gross feet, anything like that. That's hilarious. We add that to our YouTube channel.
Charles, what are your favorite search terms?
So I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I've been on that website for over 20 years. If I call them, I think the lady sprains her shoulder picking up the phone. They answer in like 2 seconds when I call. I have the exact thing you're supposed to write. Not going to tell anybody though. I'm always the first one. I see it first, and if I want it, I get it first. So I would just say search Star Wars.
This is a good question for you, Charles. I like this question. When you send in multiples of the same item, so let's say you sent in 5 Yodas all in the same submission order, do you think that there's a better chance that you'll get grades? I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but do you think that there's a better chance you get good grades, or do you think that they'll compare them, side by side, and you might get really dinged on some of them?
You know what? I never actually thought of that. I would think it's probably higher odds if maybe you sent in like 2, so they can, look like 1-to-1, and they think one's an 85, and they're like, hey, this one's nicer. It's got to be a 90. But I think if you sent in like 9 or 10 of them, that they would be all over the place.
I'm curious to see what happens with I've got an AFA batch that should be done in the next 6 weeks or so, but I sent in 5 ARC troopers, vintage collection ARC troopers. There's 3 different kinds you can choose from, but I sent 5 of 2 of them. So I've got 10 of two characters to AFA. So I'm really curious to see, if I end up with all of them at 80, all of them at 85, or like you said, I've managed to snag a couple of 90s in there. And another good question that's a side note here that I was curious. Have you noticed that the grading companies have gotten stricter?
For me, I think CAS has been the same. I don't think they're looser or stricter. AFA, I'm still waiting on my first order. I think I have 4. I have 4 orders there now, so I'm not really sure about them.
I think AFA has definitely gotten much stricter.
I agree.
I think CAS definitely in the beginning when they first started out was a little looser. I would say over the last couple of years, some of their grades, I would say, are actually pretty spot on some of them. They're pretty consistent now. Hey, sexy bros.
So this, I want to make sure to do this super chat from Matt K. Way too generous. I'm finally scrolling. I'm trying to get through all the questions. You guys are hitting me hard, but I finally got to the super chat from Matt K. Matthew K. Good buddy of mine. He also donated the Oratet bootleg that's currently running right now in a giveaway on my channel. But yeah, I agree with Chris on that. I feel like AFA has really gotten tight. I mean, really gotten tight. And I hope I'm wrong, but the next batch will tell the tale. But my last batch from AFA, man, it was like, I looked at that thing, zoomed in. I could not find anything wrong with this thing. It was an 80. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's crazy to me. So
going back to that grading question about sending in 1 versus 10, I think technically it really shouldn't matter because you're grading each figure by a certain system, a point system, a condition system, so it really shouldn't matter. Now, does it matter? It probably does, but I'm just saying in general it shouldn't matter. They should be following a certain system for each figure or every figure, and that's how they should be following it with a grade.
Yeah, I agree with that. Brandon, I'm going to have a somewhat related question for you on this one. Sam says grading is such a love-hate relationship. I complain because it takes so long, but then when they come back, it looks amazing. So I know you don't grade yet, but do you have anything in the hobby that's a love-hate relationship?
Oh, boy.
Put you on the spot.
I think I love my toys and I love collecting, but then the space is what I hate and how much space it takes up. Because some days I walk in and I'm just like, what am I doing with all this? And, I told Chris the other day, I'm like, I'm selling everything. And then the next day I'm buying more. So
yeah. That's exactly me too.
I actually called him too because I was going to buy some stuff.
Of course, Chris is never one to take advantage of a friend and exploit them for his own financial gain. Chris or Charles, do you have any love-hate relationships as it relates to the collecting or the hobby or the community at everyone?
Well, I love the grade. It just takes way too long, and then when you drop something, so I dropped these 2 the other day. So now I hate these.
Well, be careful with that loot because that tip will fall off.
I know. Yep. I gotta take them out.
Yep. Chris, how about you? Any love-hate type things?
Just in terms of grading, like I wish like for instance, my brother just waited 8 months for those items to come in, 9 months. The fact that they broke and it needs a simple recasing, I think CAS really needs to open up a separate tier like AFA has and do a recasing that's like 1/3 the time. Like, why should he have to send that back in now and wait another 9 months? Like, it's already labeled. They know the grade. Just look it over real fast and put it in a new case and get it on its way.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain aspects of I think overall, there's. I don't really have a love-hate relationship too much with much other than the turnaround times. I get frustrated sometimes with some of the drama that's associated with the
social media in general.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's really just Facebook. I mean, I don't really have much drama on my channel or on Instagram or anything, but it's just like some of the Facebook groups, they just get really worked up, and it's hard to kind of it makes me want to delete Facebook sometimes. It gets frustrating.
Absolutely.
Oh, of course.
Does anyone have any vintage micro collection in their collection? I don't have any personally, but do you guys have any like the micro worlds, anything like that? I love the way they look in the box, but
it's just another rabbit hole that I just don't need to go down, but they are awesome. And finding them in good condition, like perfect boxes, are always hard.
Yeah, it's that flap, man. That flap always gets bent.
Yep.
Charles, do you have any?
I have one right above me. You can't see it, but yeah, I can't.
I played with those all the time growing up. I had the Hoth one with the ion cannon. It kind of clicked and moved around.
Yep.
And I had the Wampa Cave. Those were some awesome micro collections, and it didn't take up much space, and I could kind of play with it on my desk. I need to buy like a loose one, just have it on my desk to fidget with. Brandon, do you have any?
Yeah, I think I have all of them.
Of course he does.
You got all of them? Of course you do.
Guy's got everything.
I have never done this personally, but Charles and Chris, have you guys ever disagreed with a grade and asked them to reconsider? I just accept it and move on with my life. I know for a fact that I've had undergrades and I've definitely had some overgrades too. So I feel like it all evens out in the end. But if you guys ever asked them, say, you need to look at that again.
No, I've never done that before. I've disagreed, of course, so like you said, and I've moved on. There was a time where I actually got a AFA item. To me, it looked like it was undergraded. So I sent it into CAS as sort of a test to myself, 3 years ago. CAS graded it the exact same grade. So it actually made me happier knowing that they both saw it the same way.
Yep. That's a good point.
And it was an 80 plus too. It wasn't like it was an 80 or an 85. AFA had a figure grade as 80 plus. It was a tri-logo FET. And then when I sent it into CAS, I broke it out of the case, sent it in loose, and it came back an 80 plus also. So, Yeah,
I've tried it both ways. I've broken them out of cases, and I've sent. I want to say I've sent 3 from that were in AFA cases, and I sent to CAS, and then I sent 2 from CAS to AFA, and all 5 of them, I believe, all came back the same grade.
And that's what we want to see as graders and people who like loose grading. We want to see a consistency amongst all of them because they should be following a certain pattern of grading. So it's always good to see that.
Now, this is a great point from Charles. Charles, who's another Patreon supporter and good friend of, I think, all of us, right? I got the pleasure to meet him last year. That was awesome. Now, Charles, on the show here, you collect TMNT, correct?
I do. I am completely finished, though.
Well, I was really surprised to hear this, but I spoke with one of the owners of CAS, and they said that easily, far and away, the largest number of submissions that they get is for TMNT, for that line. Versus, I thought it for sure would be Star Wars. They said, no, it's not even close. TMNT is our number 1 product.
Yep. I asked them the same thing. I think they told me 50% of all submissions are all turtles. So
that is mind-blowing to me.
That's insane.
That's crazy.
I think I have the first 25 there. 24. I have all loose graded and then all mocks.
Well, I know you guys follow their Instagram page, but I don't know if you've seen any of their prototypes that they grade. I mean, there's somebody that just sent in everything. I mean, it had to have been multi thousands of dollars of very rare prototypes. It was pretty mind blowing to see them.
So the thing to say that only CAS right now is grading turtles, right? AFA is not doing them.
Well, yeah, that might be why then. Yeah.
So there's only
Brandon,
one company doing it.
Brandon, do you collect anything else other than Star Wars? Is that really your bread and butter, and that's it?
Thinking of maybe dabbling into G.I. Joe, but
Aliens?
Alien.
Oh, I collect Alien, but I only have a few of those. But the Super 7 Alien figures,
Those are cool.
I like
Those are
those.
so cool.
Yeah. Cool.
That's another one of my favorite movie lines as well as Alien. So I have those, and then as far as vintage toys, I don't know, maybe G.I. Joes, but that's another rabbit hole that I don't know if I want to get into.
Yeah, I had a
Jones.
really nice collection of G.I. Joes at one point, but I ran out of space, man. I had to get rid of them. Chris, I know you got the Indiana Jones going. Do you have your thoughts on any other kind of toy lines, or is that it?
I'm doing Indiana Jones right now. Absolutely love them. And then I wanted to do the ones that what's John Walden collecting? The superpowers?
Oh, superpowers, yeah.
Superpowers.
Those are cool.
So I've been thinking about doing that for a while now too, and I'm starting to see the prices are constantly going up on those. So it would be nice to start maybe doing those.
Yeah, Patreon supporter and good friend Matthew K. He's started the superpowers line. I mean, within a week he had like 6 near mint, flawless looking superpowers figures. I was like, well, nothing like diving right in head first. I mean, it was unbelievable to see how quickly he assembled those. Any other than eBay or Facebook? Do you guys have any other purchase platforms that you use? I can't think of anything off the top of my head personally. I mean, for comics, maybe there's some good platforms out there, but this brings up a good point that I'm going to talk about later. But CAS just did like a Whatnot kind of live event type thing with Kevin Eastman and some of the graded TMNT toys in their line. They started the auctions at $1 on Whatnot. It was kind of a big live event that looked pretty cool. And it does seem like more and more people are using Whatnot, mainly for comics. But have you ever tried out Whatnot or any other kind of similar platform for finding action figures?
Yeah. I went on Whatnot. I think I spent $300 in one day, and I just got so much stuff in. It was okay. Yeah.
I use Whatnot, but what I get in is kind of
Garbage.
you don't see it that well, and you're on your phone, and they don't show it that great on there, and it's super fast, and you get it in, and you're like, I paid that much for this. I'm like, I didn't notice that in the picture or when it was on video. So
Yeah.
yeah.
One of like my secret websites that's won't be a secret in about 5 seconds is once in a while I hop right onto Etsy.
Oh yeah, no, I use Etsy. That's where I picked up my graded. It was already graded.
Yeah.
Turkish bootleg AT-AT driver, overstock, unassembled, non-sonic. Yeah. I mean, how is that on Etsy? I was like, well, this has got to be a joke.
Someone actually told me about it, and I hopped right on, and there was so much stuff. I spent a whole crap load of money, and then all of a sudden, I can't find anything on there now. So someone else is on there.
There are some deals on Etsy occasionally. There's a guy named Skywalker something, Skywalker Chronicles. He always has really. I mean, I bought a AFA 85, admittedly an old case, but at first 12 C3PO for like $90.
Wow.
I mean, that's a good deal, and that was not that long ago. I mean, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Well, I need to wrap this up because my bladder is that of a 4-year-old girl, but or I can step away, but I don't want dead air. Okay, one of you's got to step up and do hosting duties. Chris, do you want to do that?
Well, we do have our own podcast, so I think we're kind of used to.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to Chris to be host. Brandon and Charles, I want good behavior from the two of you, but I drank too much coffee, guys. So I'm going to put the question up. Chris, go.
Question: what was each of your first graded item that you ever sent in? And let's start with Charles, since Charles does grading and Brandon doesn't.
So my first item I ever sent in for grading. I know my first one I ever bought was an IG-88 I bought it on the IC, like in a claim sale. The first one I ever sent in, I want to think it was one of my red bars. I sent in like a 1977 red bar.
Okay.
I think that was my first one.
Brandon, you said that you got some custom pieces done lately at a show.
Yes, at ICCon.
Anything that you want to share?
A couple of them were modern, believe it or not. Power of the Force 2. A couple figures that were owned by Dave Prowse that I bought on his at his estate sale when overseas.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That were owned by him, so those are getting graded, and also a Julian Glover owned figure as well. Those are the first two things are graded, or they're not grading; they're getting encased. And,
getting encased.
Yeah.
Now, I actually remember the first item that I ever sent in for grading. I used to be really big into MOCs. I started collecting MOCs back in 1999, I think, or 2000. And I would say right when AFA came out in the beginning, the early 2000s, I sent in a 12-back B Vader to get graded because I wanted to see how it had, how it came out. Now, at the time, I didn't really realize that a cracked bubble would devalue so much. So I sent in a 12-back Vader. That was the first piece ever, and it came back a 60. And it took me a little, I got it back, and I'm like, how's this thing a 60? And then I realized, like, oh, I guess they knock you off for a cracked bubble and stuff, or blister. So that was my first item I ever sent in. John, do you remember your first item that you ever sent in to get graded?
I used to do a lot of Black Series, but in terms of vintage, it was probably some loose graded stuff. I know at one point I sent, before I even had my YouTube channel, I had 5 Darth Vader figures, vintage, and they were loose. And I sent all 5 of them in, and all 5 of them came back with 85s. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, I thought for sure someone would get 80s or 75s. But Brandon, I'm gonna ask you a question here. Have you ever sold anything that you regret? I know I do.
That's a tough question. I think I sold some of the original figures not the ones that I had as a kid, but some of the ones when I started getting back into the hobby. I sold some of those, and looking back at it now, I'm like, maybe I should have kept held on to those because they were nice figures, and but not yet. I haven't sold anything yet that I regret.
Charles, how about you, man?
If you have watched our show, this story has come up about 100 times. I regret my brother selling my Star Wars collection that I had when I was little. I still think about this.
It eats at you.
He sold it to a local comic book store for $50, and he went right to Taco Bell, and he ate as much food as he possibly can.
Sounds about right.
None of that's true whatsoever. We actually did sell it at a local comic book store, but it was my brother who initiated the process. It wasn't me, because I'm 2 years younger than he is. So
I have very specific memories of setting. I was a kid, I was probably 12, and I was like setting up a yard sale, and I had like a whole C-3PO gold case, action figure case full of figures, and they were like double, triple inside some of those things. I sold the whole case for $20. I mean, there was probably 100 figures in there easily. It's pretty bad.
Well,
you guys collect. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I had my whole mock collection that I had sold in 2010. It was right when I got divorced, so I had a whole entire carded collection. That took me 10 years to do. I pretty much had every single card, Tri-Logo, Power of the Force, all of them, and I had to sell those. So
I bet that was a brutal feeling.
It was,
especially 2010. That was like right before the big run up, after Force Awakens.
I have most of the prices written down of what I had bought them for and sold them for, and looking back now, 12 years later, it makes me want to throw up.
Oh, I can only imagine. You had the Anakin on the Power of the Force card, didn't you?
Yeah, I had every Power of the Force one. I was missing the General Madine Tri-Logo. which is the most expensive one by far. But I had the Jawa Tri logo. I had Boba Fett. Those two were not in good condition whatsoever, but I had them.
Amazing. God, Lord. Another question from Steve CTG. He says, do you guys collect any autographs? I definitely have a few, not a lot.
Brandon.
This is the guy to talk to.
You're the autograph guy. Well, tell us a little bit about your autograph collection.
I have I like movie posters, so I have a couple autograph posters of from Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and I branched out into other movies and obviously, but collect some 8x10s and some autographed figures. I get some of the Power of the Force 2 figures signed whenever I go to cons. I have a couple vintage figures that I have signed, a couple Harrison Ford figures. Hi.
Wow. We have enough time for this?
Yeah, sure.
I'll see a little bit.
Yeah, Brandon, I really think the Power of the Force 2 line is perfect for autographs. You know, they look so nice. If you use like a nice bright color, like it really pops on the card. I feel like.
So I've got quite a few of those, and I'll be selling a few because I have extras. So if anybody wants any.
So for me, whenever I have a question about poster, I literally just go to Brandon and I ask him. Because I know that he's really into like that stuff. He's the guy that sits outside on a line of Rite Aid at 12 o'clock at night because there's a guy at 9 o'clock in the morning signing autographs. So he'll wait 9 hours in line in the rain.
So you're like the paparazzi that harass Harrison Ford when he comes out of a restaurant, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yes.
I wish.
Well, the only one I really want to get an Ashley Eckstein signed Ahsoka card. I would love to have that. I think that'd be really cool.
I met her at
Brandon has that.
I met her actually in person at Comic-Con.
Yeah, I think that would be. They pop up on eBay occasionally. I'm too weird to want to meet her in person, but I'd definitely like to pick one of those up. I think it'd be cool. Another question from Charles. He says, "What are your personal grails that you have your eye on but don't have yet? Something realistically attainable." And Chris already kind of answered that with his double telescoping Vaders or Kenobis. But how about you, Brandon? Do you have any kind of grail items, big boy items that are realistically attainable for you that you'd love to have?
Toxic Limbs Bosk and a vinyl cape. Jawa.
Yeah, those are good choices. How about you, Charles?
R5D4 red bar on a card, like a mock.
That would be pretty epic. That would be a nice one.
Not a mock guy at all. I don't like them. I don't want them. That's the only one I would most likely buy.
And they're pretty expensive, but it's not like, it's not like $30,000. I mean, I think the last one at Hake sold in the threes, somewhere in there, which is still a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know what I have. I think for action figures, I'm not like I'm more opportunistic. I don't know if I necessarily have one off the top of my head that I absolutely have to have. And there's some Spanish figures I'd probably like to fill in. I wouldn't mind getting the Hoth Rebel Soldier with the dark brown and the pale face with like a metallic Bespin blaster. That's probably one that's realistically attainable in high grade. But
I think just that blaster alone, isn't it going for like, I don't know, $800 or something? No. Yeah, you can pick them up for like $400. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I very recently, I think Jeremy B, who we both know, he sold an AFA 80 plus, I think, for around it was like 900 or 1,000 for the whole figure. So that was with the metallic blaster. So I think that's attainable. It's more money than I want to spend right now, but it's certainly attainable. And I'd like to fill in some of my Spanish figures, kind of like the way you've done, Chris, here recently with picking up some loose graded Spanish Pox and PBP. I think those are really awesome figures, and the color schemes are just so different.
Oh yeah. I'm actually really glad that I started to go down that path because looking at them, they're so cool. They really are.
Do you guys collect any micro machines from the 1990s Cisco DRS? I don't have any of that stuff. I had a huge collection of them, back when I was younger. But I had like this little red plastic box, and it was just full of micro machines type stuff. But I don't have any now. How about you guys? I'm sure Brandon probably does.
I'm sure he does.
No, I have some from when I was a kid. They're somewhere, but I don't play with them or anything.
Yeah, I do actually.
Are you guys? I know you guys recently gave away the HasLab Razor Crest on your channel, which was a very generous giveaway. And this is probably a good time to remind folks to make sure to go subscribe to 5 Idiots Talking Toys if you haven't already. They gave away a sealed, mint and sealed box Razor Crest, people. That's like $800. That's like an $800 item or more. Have you guys thought about getting any more HasLabs like the Jabba's throne room with the fat Bib Fortuna that kind of looks like me?
I think they all look cool, and I would love to, but it's just space. You know, at least for me, what it comes down to is space, and I would rather use the space for a vintage item.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, they're really nice. I don't really like the throne room. I got to be honest with you. I don't, you know, after looking at the Razor Crest and all the little details and weapons and little lockers that open up and those 2 beautiful mint on card they came with, I just, you know, I wasn't that impressed with it. I know a lot of people are, and no offense if you like it, but from my perspective, it was underwhelming. Yeah, make sure to hit that like button. Hulk smash that like button, guys. Well, we're at about 1 hour and 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and call this a day. I had so much fun with you guys, just, you know, chit-chatting. We didn't really have an agenda, and the audience is what made this. They brought the questions, you know, and I want to thank everybody. Also, I want to make sure to also give another shout out to Save the Rancor and to Matthew K for the very generous, you know, live stream chat payments or whatever you call them. What are they called? Super chats? Super chats. Yeah. One last question before we wrap up. Vic says, are the turnaround times worse for vehicles than for figures? I mean, if they're mint and sealed box, the answer is probably no, but the customs, yes, I would think. You know, like loose graded stuff.
That's a great question. I can answer that, but I'm sure Charles is chomping at the bit to answer this right now.
Go ahead, Charles. Far away.
Yeah, I have a Scout Walker. I want to say it's October of 21 or September of 21. It's still not done. You know what? It's actually July of 21. Sorry.
July of 21. So it's, wow.
Yeah, so I'm at 14 months for a loose Scout Walker. And they told me a Scout Walker is the hardest vehicle for them to, I guess, like attach. Because there's so many moving parts.
That makes sense. I saw somebody grade an AT-AT Walker. I saw it on Facebook or somewhere. I was like, good God, that has got to be the biggest case in the world.
I graded a TIE Interceptor. It took 13 months to get graded. When they shipped it to me, it came in broken. I had to send it back. It took another 5 months. Then they sent it back again, and it broke in shipping a second time. And then I just kept it. At that point, I gave up. And you can actually see it right in the top corner up there. I don't know if it's coming in right, but up there in the top corner, I actually have it. And it's cracked. It's broken, but it's staying that way.
Well, I want to thank you guys for joining. Brandon and Charles, especially. You guys hadn't been on the channel before, and you guys took the time, you know, out of your day to join us. You know, Chris, I don't worry about because he does this full time for a living here, you know, and he's been on the channel so much. So it's great to get you guys on the channel finally, and I take full blame for not doing it sooner. So thank you again to everyone who participated, and make sure to go to 5 Idiots Talking Toys and subscribe. And appreciate everyone watching as well as on the replay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having us on.
Have a good night.